to Minnesota. And you can ask your sheriff, local sheriff here, who's familiar with that. Sheriff, how many refugees are there in the Twin Cities section of Minnesota now?
I think over 2 million.
And they're Somalians, primarily Somalians, is that correct? Okay. And they are trouble, big time trouble. They are a huge law enforcement problem. One of their tricks up there is they'll take 10 or 12 of them and they'll rob a convenience store. They'll send 3 guys in there to rob the convenience store. 3 or 4 of them stand outside and run off all the witnesses to the robbery. Then those 2 groups leave, and the next group comes in and talks to the police and says, we don't know, we didn't see anything. And it's been driving law enforcement crazy in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities area. This is what you're going to be facing in your community if you don't get busy on this. In the second page, you'll see in big bold print under IV there, the second paragraph down, for the care and supervision of and legal responsibility of unaccompanied refugee children in the state. Now, that unaccompanied refugee children has been interpreted to mean the children at the border. Several years ago, I talked to the governor about 3 years ago, and he said, when I asked him about this, he said, well, I've cut back on the number of refugees. I've told the Department of State that I don't want any more refugees. And what he meant by that is I don't want an increase. He didn't mean I didn't want any more refugees. But I, for a long time, thought that's what he meant. But what he meant was he didn't want to increase. So they cut back on it about 3%. Simultaneously with that, the contractors and advocates slipped in a $1.1 million increase in the budget for refugee resettlement. So I saw him about 5 weeks ago. I told him what happened. He said, well, I cut back on it. I said, well, at the same time, they slid a budget increase under your nose. And he said, I just said, the statute requires you to take care of those unaccompanied children. I said, what do you think that money was for? He said, you mean I'm statutorily required to do that? I said, yes, that's in the statute. The governor didn't know about it because he's either got the sorriest bunch of lawyers you could find that can't get a job anywhere else, or they're left-wing lawyers, or maybe they're both. So that's what the problem is educating people to this complex piece of legislation. But I want you to start looking at this thing and researching it, and pretty soon you'll know as much as I do, and maybe more. Because everybody looks at this thing in a certain way, with a certain eye toward finding different pieces of data. And it goes on with grants. So you get the idea, I hope by now, that this is voluntary. This whole thing is something we volunteered for. And you just don't have to do this. And the only way you're going to stop it is you have to stop it. Who do I mean by you? I mean you ladies. You ladies have to stop this. Republican men are too old, too rich, too indifferent, too lazy, or they're just too independent. They're just not going to do it. The women of this state have to do this. And I'm not kidding. I talked to, ma'am, your name was? Carol. Carol thought I was kidding when I said that. I'm not kidding, man. The women have to do this. And you have a bigger vested interest in this than the men do, because these are the worst abusers of women and girls. What they do to women and girls is heinous. And what they also do to little boys, in my opinion, is even worse, if you can imagine that. They are the worst sexual perverts, the worst physical abusers of women that God's ever put on the face of the earth. I just get so angry about this sometimes that I can't stand it. But that sets the tone for the type of people you're dealing with. Let me show you some more charts. This chart This publication came out of Senator Jeff Sessions' office. And you look on the back page, and you see what their religion permits. Sex with animals, perfectly okay. You can lose your lust on an animal if you're a man. Remember, this goes back over 2,000 years. They haven't changed at all in 2,000 years. These people have not been civilized one iota in over 2,000 years. And they won't be civilized when they come here. It's an act. They haven't changed anything when they come here. They put on a good act, but they haven't changed at all.
So you got any extras of those?
Huh? Sure, I got plenty of these. Take all you want.
Yeah, we all need them back here.
We don't have any.
We never made it back here.
By all means.
The other one too.
This goes on to say, this, you can hand out some of these different ones. This one, but you can pass out these for me. Some of these, I'm sorry. All right, let me have one of these.
Yeah, I left the last one.
Now, the way this is interpreted, sex with animals, is since it's not a woman, it's not a sin. But to keep from, now that they've done this, the animal's tainted, so they got to kill the animal. And whoever wrote this put a joke on here, look at the goat that they just had sex with. The goat says, so what? Say what?
Say what?
The goat obviously doesn't enjoy this. But this is, it's written in the context of a joke because it is so nasty and filthy that you can't imagine this happening. But this is still going on. They still sacrifice animals. I worked for 18 months trying to clean up a Muslim mosque that was behind the home of a disabled Vietnam veteran. And they just ran over this guy's life. One of the things they did, we got code enforcement to tear down the animal cages. We got them torn down 3 times. Every time they put them back up. They had animal cages where they had pigeons on the top, chickens in the middle, goats down the bottom. And of course the droppings go down in that order. They'll cut the head off a pigeon, let it bleed out in a small, unimportant ceremony. If it's a chicken they use, they cut the head off, they bleed out. It's a moderate ceremony. And if it's a really big deal ceremony, they'll take the goat, they go inside the mosque. How do I know this? Because the imam explained it to us. He was telling us all about their culture and how they do this. They take the goat inside the mosque, and they cut the goat's throat. They string him up by his hind legs and let him bleed out. That's part of their ceremony. So we got these animal pens torn down 3 different times. 3 different times. What did the Muslims do? They moved it across the street, and 2 or 3 months later, we saw animal control come in there, grabbed the animals, and they tore down the cages again. So they've moved the animals somewhere else. They have not moved or changed anything in their religious ceremony. They've just been a little slicker about hiding the animals. So this is going to continue to go on and continue to spread. This religion is based on bullying. Bullying women, bullying children, and bullying infidels. They consider you to be an infidel. That's a non-believer. That's how they have become the predominant religion throughout the world. Now they bully everybody else who doesn't want to go along with them. Typically what they'll do is they'll just decapitate you. This is coming. This is what you're going to be facing in this America. And law enforcement is going to be overrun by this. You're not going to be able to, the law enforcement is not going to be able to keep up if this continues. Yes, sir.
I just want to make a point. we make a mistake by calling it a religion and giving it that status. We need to quit calling it that.
Exactly.
It is a complete
Exactly.
social, economic,
It's a political
it's a
organization.
political organization. Islam is not a religion.
Absolutely.
It is, and we need to quit giving it that status. Because we get rid of that status, it no longer has any constitutional provisions as a religion. Okay?
Exactly.
It's got its own law, it's got
And that's
its
the
own...
defense they use every time we send code enforcement out there
It
to
is.
clean up the slum they created in this man's backyard.
It is not a religion. They say, no, this is a complete social, political
You got it right,
agenda.
buddy, you got it right. Absolutely.
We get rid of their religious status, we can
They
wipe
use
them
our
out.
Constitution against us. They use our freedom of religion against us, and they use it as defense to everything you do to try to get them to act like civilized people.
I prefer death cult.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's
All right.
a death cult, so we don't use that term religion anymore, because we give them that status just by saying it.
Bingo. All right, let me move on this, if I may. This came out of Senator Jeff Sessions' office September 10th, 2015, which is just last month. Sessions has been after this issue now for several years. He's probably the leading authority in the country on this, he and his staff. Now, the refugee resettlement contractors say that when I first started contesting this stuff about 3 years ago, soon to be 3 years ago, I took the charts they published in their own website, and it showed only about 30% of them were actually working in Georgia. Well, they said, well, that's because of the recession, and that's, they just treated me like I'm the village idiot, I didn't know what I was talking about. 2 weeks, within 2 months after I testified in the General Assembly, they changed their national website to indicate that 80% of them were working. Well, they went from 30% to 80% in 2 months. That's an amazing turnaround. What they started doing was they started publishing the data in a different way. Now, the actual data I read was 30 to 32% were working in Georgia. It was probably the most unsuccessful program in the country when it came to actually finding people jobs because of the severity of the recession in Georgia. But what they were doing is they changed the definition of working. Now, in the statute, and I was trying to get Pat to pull this up tonight because I got consumed with getting all this stuff together for the presentation. I forgot to bring the part of the statute where it talks about self-sufficiency. In the federal statute, they define self-sufficiency. I'm talking about in terms of working, making a living, supporting yourself. The normal, ordinary definition of this, as you understand it, means, and as I understand it, you mean you work and you support yourself without the benefit of government aid.
Pay taxes.
In the Refugee Resettlement statute, and this is the way they told it to your members of the General Assembly, and the way they're telling it all over the country, they define self-sufficiency as anybody who does not get cash assistance, which allows the refugee to take the benefit of 16 different federal programs, including free college education. They can take all those food stamps, housing, refugee medical assistance, all right down the line, give me every one of them, and still be considered to be self-sufficient. So they were telling legislators that they were self-sufficient. And they were virtually calling me a liar. And I held the definition up, and these dumb buddies that you've got in the General Assembly looked at me like, boy, you're an idiot. How could you say that? These are such nice people here. And they are the smoothest, slickest people you've ever seen. Lovely people. They could con anybody. And that's the way they work. That's the way they work themselves into the good graces of your legislators, who sit there like a bunch of dumb clucks. You see, your legislator is only concerned, unless there's a bill he's concerned with, he's only concerned, exactly, money from the lobbyist. They're concerned about that because they want to get reelected. Or in the budget process, what is published to the legislators are all the changes in the budget each year. They never see the budget as a whole. If they saw it, they wouldn't understand it, because it's written in a way to conceal all the money they're throwing away. We have a huge spending problem, Georgia. We got plenty of money. Plenty of money. Now I'm going to show you where some of that money's going. But your legislator never sees anything but changes. Wait a minute. He is only looking for changes that apply to his county. So we've narrowed it down to the changes. Now he's looking at only things that affect his county, he or she. So they have no idea how the government's spending money. And they're not interested, because they got all these ridiculous bills floating around. And they're all talking about these stupid bills. They need to stop meeting and stop passing bills. We need a moratorium on bills. They need to go down there and concentrate on where they're throwing the money away.
We have the same problem with our Supreme Court, because our Supreme Court is citing precedent rather than the Constitution.
Right. Anyway, Sessions Subcommittee, you see 90% of the Middle Eastern refugees are on food stamps, almost 70% on cash welfare. Now, if you look down in this report, and you need to read every word on this report, the charts, the fine print, everything. This is the best thing I've seen written on refugees, and the most poignant analysis of this in years and years. Sessions spent a lot of work on this and time. Down in the third line, down here in the explanation, he talks about Middle Eastern refugees are from Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, and Yemen. All these are trouble spots in the world. You're all familiar with what's going on a national basis on all these different places. Saudi Arabia is at war with Yemen. Jordan is had all these border skirmishes and trouble with ISIS. You know about the Syrian problem? And frankly, nobody has paid much attention to refugee settlement in the last 2 years until you found out the Syrians were coming. And all of a sudden, you're all excited. You see? You're all excited over Syrians. Well, listen, these aren't the first terrorists to come here. You remember the Sinar brothers? Yeah. The Boston Marathon bomber brothers? They were refugees. They were asylees. Their parents were refugees. They were asylees. Well, asylees are covered under the Refugee Resettlement Program. When I brought that up in the General Assembly, again, the refugee contractor said, no, we don't cover asylees. They just flat out lie. And these legislators, the dumb clerks that they are, sit there and say, what's wrong with you? They just said they don't cover this program. You know, these people have been coming down here for years. These are honorable people. And Newton, you just coming down here, you started talking about this. You sound like a crazy man. Well, look at what Jeff Sessions says there. During the period of 2008 to 2013, we're just confining this to about 10 countries. The 10 worst problems in the world. By the way, let me finish on the Sinar brothers. They came from Chechnya. The Chechnyan rebels have been giving Putin serious troubles over there. They're the same ones that blew up the Moscow subway several years ago, if you remember that incident. They're the ones that took over the opera house in Moscow and kept, almost 200 people hostage, killed some of them, and then the Russian military finally stormed the place, and they lost some people, but they did finally regain control of the situation. Now, Vladimir Putin can't contain the problem. Look what we're going to have, the problem we're going to have over here. But those were Chechnyan Muslims. Of course, you know about the shootout and the people that were killed in the Boston Marathon bombing. In Tennessee, the guy who shot those 5 servicemen, his whole family came over on refugee resettlement. Well, the spin job, the refugee resettlement contractors and advocates said, oh no, he came on a student visa. Student visa. The guy was 22 years old, came over on a student visa as a grammar school student. There are no student visas for grammar school children. or small children. He came before he was a school age. But see, that's the spin they put on this stuff. Well, I went up to Chattanooga, and I got on the street, and I started investigating this. And that's what I found, that the people of Chattanooga knew where these people came from. They just couldn't do anything about it. They didn't think they could do anything about it. And you saw what happened. During this period, 2008 to 2013, they admitted 115,617 refugees and granted asylum. That's under the program, the same asylum program that the contractors made out like I didn't know anything about what I was talking about. Another 10,026. Well, what I am embarrassed to find out is that also during this period of time, Homeland Security reported that they issued 308,805 green cards to these people. I'd never even looked at this. I had no idea. And I've been telling people that we brought 100,000 refugees to Georgia. I figured that would take care of 70,000 we've actually brought here, actually reported to bring here. Fudged on that figure a little bit on the high side, and I threw in a few more estimating the asylees. I didn't know I was 300 and some thousand short of what was actually coming here. You see what's happening? This is a huge migration. It's a colonization of this country. 1 out of 4 people are either immigrants, recent immigrants, or children of recent immigrants. You are going to be in the minority. And you say, well, that's not me. I've moved up here in the North Georgia mountains. I don't have to put up with this. I got just as far away from Atlanta as I can get. I've heard that over and over. I heard this guy the other day say, well, that's not me. I moved up here to Johns Creek, and these houses are too expensive for refugees to get. They'll never bother me. I ain't got to fool with Atlanta and their problems. Well, I'll tell you, both the guy who moved to the mountains and the guy who moved to Johns Creek thought he was going to get away with it. The federal government loans these people below market interest rates to buy houses in your community. If you think you're going to move away from this problem and run from it, you do not understand what's going to happen. You have no idea what's going to happen to you. And when they move in your neighborhood, and the federal government is going to put them in your neighborhood, if your town accepts any federal money, they're going to insert these people into your community. They are looking now for, and have been looking quite some time, for mid-sized and small communities to place these people in, these little colonies. You see that Spartanburg, South Carolina, and the little towns surrounding Spartanburg. They're just getting started there, but Spartanburg is soon going to have a problem. Now, the Spartanburg community is on top of this. The women in that community have, under the leadership of Christina Jeffries, have gotten together and they're fighting this. But they're only in Spartanburg. Meanwhile, while they're not looking, the refugee resettlement contractors are going to be scattering these people out in other communities. One refugee contractor is what they call their jurisdictional limit is 100 miles from where their base is. So you can expect around Spartanburg, a 100-mile radius, this one refugee contractor can seed all these little towns around there.
Joe,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to sort of emphasize what he just said about the federal grant money. If this county has taken any federal grant money in the past, then the federal government under this program can come in and settle the number of people to equal the state population diversity. In other words, they can bring up people from Atlanta or anywhere, or refugees resettlement, and populate. They can take over under eminent domain, it even says, properties in your county to equal the population distribution of the state. If you've taken any federal money in the past. And in Gilmer County, we found out we've taken one little bitty thing for a trailer park, okay, that our county commissioner happened to own part of it, but we did find that we have taken some, so we're trying to stay under the radar. And I don't know what you've done up here, but it is really serious because they're coming. They are looking for places like here where we do not meet the rest of the state's diversification. And
Last month, Obama issued.
This is exactly the type of community they're targeting
yes,
now.
it's what they're looking for.
They filled up DeKalb County, they're filling up Gwinnett, they're filling up Gainesville.
Filling up Cobb and their
Cobb.
Cherokee, they're really into Cherokee and.
Oh, they got Cherokee has got a target on their back.
Yes, they've got a target on the back and then they're working on Pickens and they're just moving them right up the road here.
Yes, sir.
Last month, Obama issued an executive order to this effect.
In this county?
No, that HUD, anything to do with HUD, now it falls under these guidelines.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Now, yes, sir.
Two things, Joe.
Yeah.
Number one, the true definition of what's going on is we have an invasion of this country.
That's right.
Not refugee resettlement. It is an invasion.
Invasion,
The other thing I was.
exactly, or colonization, pick your word, but
The other thing I heard on the news today is countries in Europe where people have not been concerned about having guns, they're flying off the shelf in Europe.
Mostly the women.
right. Well, all of a sudden, you know, about 3 days ago, I got notice that the BBC wanted to talk to me. I don't know what this reporter from the BBC wants to talk to me about, but I can guarantee you, whatever he reports is not going to be the truth. There's going to be some spin to it, a lot of spin to it. I was at the Trump rally, I don't know, I guess it's about 4 weeks ago when he was in Norcross. I handed out 2,000 of these flyers that's got Fran Miller's name on it. I don't know. It's this flyer right here. Yeah. I handed out 2,000 of these. I was hitting about 1 out of 4 people. A lot of people were sharing it. They said, "Don't thank you. I don't need to." And so there were about 8,000 people in that line. I could have given out 5,000 of these flyers if I had them. That's how concerned people are. Now, the time is right for you ladies to get active. You need to kick your husband in the rear end and get him moving on this.
How about to go buy a pig?
No. Listen, I've heard all those jokes, and that's a lot of fun, but
I'm serious.
I'm talking about money here. This is money. This is real money. This is all about money. This is all it's ever been. Yes, sir.
Joe, could I offer one observation? I taught constitutional history for 36 years.
Yeah.
Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2. Mr. Lincoln, Obama's favorite president, employed it to put copperheads, Democrats, in jail when they opposed his handling of the Civil War.
That's right.
Clement Vallandigham was his favorite target. He was a newspaper editor. He was a Republican, what we now call a Republican. Because Mr. Lincoln defined invasion.
What did Article 1, Section 2 tell us? Tell us what that said.
Invasion and in the event of invasion or insurrection. The president can suspend habeas corpus with a stroke of the pen.
He did it in Maryland.
He did it.
He put all those resistors in Maryland
But
in jail.
speaking about invasion, you mentioned the word invasion. If the invasion is already here, and Mr. Obama might define it as an invasion, all he needs is the insurrection.
Right. You've got to get to work on this because he's out to destroy the rest of this country. And a few, 16 months are left, and he's moving fast.
January 20,
Tell you so what else he's
2017.
doing. You know, he's letting these federal prisoners out of jail. 6,000 are going to come out this month. 6,000 across the country. Georgia's getting 157 of those people, and they're targeted for DeKalb County, and they'll spread out from there. Each month, it's going to be at least another 6,000 or more. So think what law enforcement is going to have to handle. This is going to be this is gonna be a huge problem for law enforcement. I didn't find this out till last week. Cobb County Sergeant told me that. So I started looking for it on the, sir?
It ends up being the Wild West.
I mean, we got hell coming at us. It's wide open. Now, everybody said, well, my legislator wouldn't vote for that. I know my legislator. He or she is a nice person. They say they're conservatives. I can tell you something about these conservatives. There is no such thing as conservative Republican Party any longer. It is not a center-right party. It's a center-left party. When the Republicans found out that they did not have a 2/3 majority in the legislature so they could change the Constitution, they started soliciting Democrats, white Democrats, to get them to move to the Republican Party. What they did was promise them that they would adopt some Democrat principles, and one of them is refugee resettlement. So now you don't have a center-right party anymore, you got a center-left party. And that left, the only thing left in the Democratic Party are the blacks, and they don't understand why they're getting left behind. They're getting hurt the most by refugee resettlement, yet they're the hardest people to convince. And I'm going to show you why in a minute. Here's a list of people who have been on the Health and Human Services. They changed the name of both committees to just Human Services Committee. These are people who've been serving on this committee, are serving now, or have served in the past. Now, one of the tricks they like to pull down there is when somebody finds out about like refugee resettlement or some other horrible program that they're funded down there, they start getting off committees and moving to other committees. So your hometown legislator says, well, I'm not on that committee. They don't tell you, I was on it last year, the year before, the year before that. When things get hot, they get off the committee. And then they'll change the committee name. Katie Dempsey runs a subcommittee of the Health and Human Services in the House. You won't see her name as committee chairman on any committee anymore because I started getting after her on refugee resettlement. So what they did, they dropped the name, but the committee still meets. And so when you go down there and look on the web, you don't see Katie Dempsey anymore as a committee chairman. But when you go down there and they publish the notices of committee meetings, it's Katie Dempsey, chairman of the subcommittee on Health and Human Services. You see the game they're playing with you? Don't believe your legislators. They're going to cover their rear ends. So what I did is I handed out 500 of these at the last GOP convention. I'll be up there again, handing out this stuff again, unless I get thrown out. This time they'll probably be waiting for me and throw me out. But I hope I get thrown out of a lot of other places. Because if I don't get thrown out of some, I'm not doing my job. So don't listen to these lying little legislators. Some of them don't even know they're voting for this. A good many of them. I've spent 2 years educating, but they all know about it now. When they tell you they don't know about it, they are absolutely being disingenuous with you. They know. Because we have been faxing and emailing them in their legislative offices now for 2 years. They know or should know. Here's what I hand out in Fran Miller's district. I've been working door to door in Fran Miller's district. I've covered in the last 3 days that I've been out before my back collapsed on me. And I'm not going to let it stop there because I've got somebody hired to do this now. So I can at least drive the car. Somebody else is going to be doing the legwork, but I'm not going to stop what I'm doing. And Miller has got an opponent who opposes refugee resettlement. It's this guy right over here, Paul Maynard. You want to stand up, Paul, see what they look like? This is what. Paul, what you got on your hip there, buddy?
Sword.
A claymore.
I've very few legislators you'll see showing up in a public meeting with a gun on his hip. And he's the only one I've ever seen in this state running for office that actually puts on his flyer, no more refugees. That's kind of a weaselly way to say it, but at least he said it. You know, he didn't say stop refugee resettlement, he said no more refugees. Well, I'm not going to I'm not gonna make a goat out of the guy because he's doing this. At least you know where his heart is. He also, you know, has to get elected too, so, and deal with some of these liberals over there. But I'll tell you something, conservatives are conservatives everywhere you go, even in a crazy place like DeKalb County, Georgia. They are crying for somebody like him to come along. When I hand this thing out and show these women in DeKalb County, and that's what I've been doing for the last 6 weeks, is terrorizing the women in DeKalb County, in the Dunwoody area. When they find out that this thing is right down the street from them, I've had seen women break down and start crying. There's 1,000 refugees at this one mosque. You see the look on their face when they start reading this thing, and they get, if they're in a light jovial mood, they get real serious, and their mouth just drops open. One lady burst into tears when she saw this. People just don't know. And most of these women were 1.5 miles from this damn thing. They're right in their own neighborhood. And by the way, this thing sits adjacent to 90 vertical oil and gasoline storage tanks where the pipeline is located. It's between the Home Depot and the pipeline facilities off of Tilly Mill Road. You might have been in that store before. But this is a sample. You can change the name on this, and we'll adjust the number of refugees. Put your legislator's phone number on there. You can hand these out the same way I did at the Trump rally, and you can make these legislators pay attention. I'm doing the same thing with Buzz Brockway. I worked on yesterday. They just changed the name. I called Buzz, verified the phone number, verified that he hadn't changed his position, and Buzz is going to get these in his neighborhood. So he's another big refugee resettlement advocate. He doesn't want to cut back on the money because it might hurt somebody. He's not interested in the families that were hurt in Tennessee, or the people at the Boston Block, or your community, or his own. He's interested, he represents these 10 countries overseas. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Sure. I gave you all I had in the back there. There are a few more. Use that as a sample. Okay? Change the name to. He's in Duluth. Yeah. Now this is this flyer. Let me get some. Well, we want you to get on this side. Okay, all right. Gosh, I didn't know this many people would show up. I'm really grateful. Here's the last couple of days I've been trying to. Usually I use Gwinnett County as an example, and I've never really put this thing down on paper. But I'm working with the national group, and they wanted this data, and they wanted to know, and me to footnote this, where all this information came. So this is my first stab at publishing this piece of paper today. And I tried to tailor this to your local school system, and like I said, they weren't very cooperative. So I had to use Brooks Colvin. For some reason, the Tea Party hates Brooks Colvin, but he's been an incredible resource for me. He's the chairman of the House Committee on Secondary Education. All your local schools. I noticed that with refugee resettlement, there's no means testing. If you sign up for welfare in this country, there's means testing. They check your bank accounts. They make sure that you don't have a lot of money you're hiding, or at least they attempt to. With refugees, there's no screening on that, on their resources. So the refugee resettlement advocates brag about how all these refugees are starting businesses over here. Well, the banks are not going to loan you the money. 20% of it you have to put down if you get a loan for a business under this program. By the way, you get that at a reduced rate if you're a refugee. Sir, you look kind of perplexed there. You don't qualify for this. You're an American. Okay, so if you got any ideas you want to borrow this money at 2% or 3% below market, forget it. You can pay it. You can pay the subsidy for this, but don't think you're going to get any money for this. Okay? I'm using you, I'm just teasing you, sir.
Nothing to do.
All right, you're a good sport. So there's no means specific. A lot of these people come over here and they got serious money in their pockets. These are just moochers. They haven't been for years, there haven't been any legitimate refugees brought in on this program. These are friends of people on the UN High Commission on Refugees, which, by the way, that committee at the UN is dominated by Muslims. Now, the way they get on the list to come to America is they bribe these people. In foreign countries, bribery is a normal course of business. So they bribe their way to get on the list. They move ahead of legitimate refugees. They get on the list to come over here. And like I said, the average American welfare recipient gets $19,000 a year in support. The average refugee gets $30,000 a year, plus free college education. And there's no end to it, because there's no means testing. The welfare continues all their lives. And then their children pick it up. Sometimes this lasts 3 generations. So it's $30,000 a year in support. Now, HSBC put the average annual costs in the study, including tuition fees and living expenses for U.S. college education, at $36,564. Now, you multiply that by 4, and you get the cost of a college education, average cost, that you pay for refugees. Remember, these people average 4 children per family. Muslims average a little over 8 children. And if they get a master's degree, you just tack on another couple of years there. I've figured this. And if you see any errors in this, point them out to me, because I've just come up with this in the last couple of days. Let's go to Onion County here, 2014 figures. Because I couldn't get 2015 out of your school board, I had to rely on the State Board of Education's figures. And they gave me the total of 2,697 students. Actually, I did get the school population out of your school board. As I recall, it's 2,761 students. Now, those are not qualified students where you base the federal funding on it, because some of them transfer, some of them drop out of school, and so on and so forth. So you have to use the figures on state and federal funding for the year before. But you need to call your school board, find out your total budget, divide it by the number of students, and you can get the average cost per student if you're interested in pursuing this. Now, the total expenditures for state and federal funding in your county as of last year was $17,097,000. Cost per student was $6,339, according to the Georgia State Board of Education. The average cost in this per county of this size is $4,500 and $5,000. That's the state and federal supplement. The federal supplement is virtually nothing unless it's a Title I school. Do y'all happen to know if this is Title I schools here? Okay, well, this will be increased quite a bit for Title I schools. And that figure came from Brooks Coleman, the chairman of the House Secondary Education Committee. Now, the state and local money in your county is very close to $6,000 per student, mostly state money. So that's $30,000 a year in welfare, $24,000 a year in state and local taxes for your refugees. That's a total of $54,000 per year that you're going to be paying if you get a refugee in this county. That's what we're paying in Gwinnett and DeKalb. $54,000 per year per family. That's before they get to college age. Once they get to college age, you start adding in another $36,564 on average per student that you're paying for. Now, I know you're all glad to do that. Some of you paid for college education. You certainly don't mind paying for a few more, do you? Yes, sir.
Yeah, have any refugees been sent to Union County as of yet that you know of?
Well, we think there are about 9 of them. There's a little colony here that the judge or the sheriff is familiar with. But you can rest assured that colony will grow. And Obama is targeting these smaller communities. So you can expect that they're coming. And they're gonna be coming quickly, because Obama only has about 16 more months in office.
My cousin is the marshal of DeKalb County,
Right.
and I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and he said that his workload right now is going to be astronomical in what they're doing in DeKalb County, just because of this. Not because of the normal job a marshal does, it's just that this stuff is starting to compound. DeKalb County Police, DeKalb County Sheriff,
Right. DeKalb County has the highest percentage of welfare recipients in the entire metro area. That's what, 24 counties, is that what they call metro area? Their average annual income of the 5 largest counties in the state is the lowest. So their welfare cost is exploding. Their income is going down. DeKalb County is headed for a Detroit-style situation. Don't believe the Chamber of Commerce. And that gets me to my favorite, the thing that irritates me the most is the Chamber of Commerce. Pat Thibodeau and I were talking about this. This mess is brought to you by Delta Airlines and Coca-Cola. They got the governor of Buffalo. They have all these legislators that have these Coke executives and Delta folks in their district. And these big shots push around your legislators. And that's what's wrong with your governor. He's being bullied by Delta and Coke, Home Depot, you name Kroger, all the rest of them that are making money on this. That's what's wrong. These people in government don't represent you anymore. They represent the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce, and I'm talking about your local Chamber of Commerce too, all they want to do is increase their market share. They want to sell more of their stuff. Whatever their stuff is, they're selling. More illegal immigrants, they sell more stuff. More refugees, they sell more stuff. They don't give a damn about you. Look at their charter. They promote commerce. And that's all. That's all they've ever been about. All my life, my dad told me I grew up there telling me what a great thing the Chamber of Commerce was. I didn't realize until a few years ago that the Chamber of Commerce is the worst enemy you've got. You have to change your way of thinking. Up is not up anymore. Up is down now. And you have to change your way of thinking. And talking to Pat and her husband, I think will help you quite a bit. Well,
So what do women do?
pardon me?
What do we do?
You women need to organize. Men are not going to make the phone calls, send out the emails, create the rallies. Men are not going to organize you down at the General Assembly. You need to get together and push this thing with somebody like D.A. King. Get together the Refugee Resettlement Group, anti-refugee resettlement. Get together with D.A. King and his group, you know what I'm talking about? Get after this aggressively. Don't wait for the men to do it. You ladies have to do it. Yes, sir.
Our son is an architect in Atlanta. That was him on the phone just now. He said they just approved an addition to that mosque.
Which one? The one down on 14th Street?
Yes, sir.
It's a huge mosque.
Yes,
There are 111 mosques in this state.
Yeah, he said he's in the architecture business, and he said they just approved a new addition to it.
There are 111 mosques in this state, and there are 11 Muslim schools that are operating, and this thing is exploding. The 356,000 green card people, I had no idea they were bringing those people on the green card. I'm embarrassed because I've been telling people it's a much smaller number. This thing is 4 times as large as I even dreamed, and I was exaggerating the numbers. I thought. What a fool I was. Kasim Reed, I don't know, but Kasim Reed is a left-wing, open borders internationalist.
Well, I understand he's going to run for governor.
Well, if something doesn't happen, he's going to get elected too. But you have to change people's thinking. You have to become aggressive.
Joe,
Yes, ma'am.
we do have our commissioner here, and also
not to, but some of the people are interested in hearing what Lamar has to say about any federal money that we've spent that, you know.
Good. Lamar, let me tell you what's coming. You're gonna get a lot of people who are really nice people, are gonna be talking to you about doing this for your community. What a wonderful thing this is gonna be for your community. And they're gonna be church people. They're gonna be members of your church, the Baptist church. Let me explain something. 12 national contractors, and underneath those 12 national contractors is another 350 of these voluntary contractors. And these are your local churches. Your little left-wing minister has been telling you all these sweet things all your life. While he's telling you all this stuff, he's supporting refugee resettlement. Virtually every church denomination in Atlanta is involved in this. So, Lamar, these people are going to be coming to you, and they're going to be pressuring you, and they're going to be people that you normally thought were sane people. You thought these people were conservatives, but they're not. And they're going to be talking. They're going to be coming to you first when this happens. They probably already talking to you. So, that's what's coming if you haven't seen it already. Go ahead, Lamar. Your turn.
It's like being put on the spot.
That's right, we're holding you, we're holding you on the spot.
I don't have any, I didn't even know about the colony until, I guess the sheriff was talking about. I didn't know about that until maybe about a month ago, and I still really don't know any details about it. As far as federal money, I think mostly what you're talking about is a lot of the counties have federal low-home housing, and that's where most of that comes through HUD. We do not have any of that in Union County. Have avoided it and will always avoid it as long as I've got anything to do with it. Now, we've got little grants that we may get for certain things. They'll come through the state. They may have a little bit of federal funding in them. They may be all federal. We get a trail grant, like a Department of Natural Resources trail grant. Part of that money comes from the federal government. Part of it comes from the state, and it comes to the county. But I don't think that will have any tie-in into this problem we've got with the refugees. So
That's different.
I can't say that they're not going to talk to me and ask me, is it okay to bring them in? Because I'm going to say no if they ask me. But I don't think the commissioners have the authority or the power to stop that. I think if it does happen, it's coming through the state. It's coming from the state and therefore through the federal. So I'm learning a lot tonight to, and you've done a good job of giving us something to look out for, but I just don't have the answers.
Lamar, when these people approach you, I'm asking you to alert your community. Because that's what they've done in Spartanburg. They've done a great job of shutting this down. They shut it down altogether in Greenville because the community let Ann Richards with the Department of State know that they didn't want them. So they were able to shut it down in Greenville. And then they slid them over to Spartanburg. So just inform your community that you've been approached by these people. And they're going to be church people who will be doing this. There'll be a committee that comes to you. And they'll have people feel you out. Let these people know what your community knows what's going on. And you get organized that way. And maybe you can do what Greenville County, South Carolina did. Shut it down altogether. Because if they find out that there is hostility in the community, they'll go somewhere else. They'll go over to Toombs County.
There was a group that was coming through, I think they came to Gilmer County, but I should have came to other counties too, where they were encouraging, they were buying up foreclosures, especially ones that were just terrible amounts. And they were getting HUD money, I think it was HUD money, to restore those houses. And those are the ones that they're going to use for diversifying your neighborhoods. So if you had foreclosures that nobody's living in right now and have been fixed up, you're probably is where they're going to come to.
They're probably already there. Yeah. But the other support that comes with it, the churches and the community support, if they can't find that support in the community, and they find out there's hostility toward these people, they'll go somewhere else where it's easier to pick it. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the churches. Well, we have groups happening here in this community that are really alerted to what's going on. But anybody here belongs to a church, make sure you talk to your pastor and give him copies of this information. You know, be a leader. Don't sit back and let them lead. You know, make sure the pastors are informed of what's going on. And that'll help a great deal, because one of the things the pastors need is they need the support of their congregation. And if you talk to them and tell them that you support them about these issues, it'll mean a lot to them.
One more thing there. What I'm saying is biblical. You remember what happened with Abraham and Sarah and Hagar and Ishmael. God separated these people. He meant to separate them. He sent Hagar and Ishmael out in the desert. Okay, that's just not biblical to bring these people in here and mix with our people. There's never been peace between the infidels and these people, and there never will be.
How did God describe Ishmael before he was born to Hagar?
Tell us.
A wild donkey of a man who will war with his brothers for eternity.
That's what we got.
The churches, that they're getting to the churches under the guise of outreach programs, okay, to the refugees in the Middle East and in Syria and these poor people that need help, and they're collecting money and they're trying to get people to go over, and they'll start out with Africa, or the Middle East, or all these poor people in these 10 countries. Look and see if you don't have in your Sunday bulletin about an outreach program to somewhere, and they've already gotten to your church if they have that, and you need to talk to them, because people that in your church are doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They don't know what they've signed up for. Someone approached them and asked for help, and they then ask you all for help. And next thing you know, they've helped them right over here.
Lady, you got it. Couldn't say it enough.
Yeah, there's another problem with your churches that a lot of people may not know about. I asked several different ministers and priests from different professions, why there wasn't an uprising when they tried to take prayer out of our schools. And the response I got from each of them was, well, we don't want regular people teaching children about God. We want to keep that in the church. That came down from church hierarchy. I will not join a church. I was a member up in Virginia, and I went to a state meeting about gay rights and stuff, and the church hierarchy shut it down. They wouldn't discuss it with the state representatives. So the churches in this country, they're also concerned, the leaders, with keeping their power and control over their churches. And they are not doing what's best, what's biblical for all of us, all the time. So you need to be aware. And the ministers are under pressure from the hierarchy.
Gay and lesbian is defined, or any kind of multisexual person, is defined as a refugee under the Refugee Resettlement Act. And they are aggressively recruiting those people. It's in the statute. Bring up their website and look for yourselves.
Joe, I really appreciate this. Joe will be hanging around for a while, I'm sure, and can answer any more questions after we're finished. But we really appreciate you coming up, and I think we learned a lot.
One more thing for me. Paul Leader over here is trying to get some money out of some groups that will give him money if he'll raise money. But what he has to have is a number of different people contribute money. So at least go by there and give the guy $1. Because this dollar will be multiplied by $100 if he can get a certain number of people to contribute. So go by there. There he is in the red shirt, the goofy-looking guy there with glasses. Paul, you stand at the door now and get at least $1. Throw your hand out. You got to put your name down and your address, and phone number, and what you do for a living. If you like me, put out nothing. Okay? I don't do nothing for a living. I didn't do nothing when I did work, except hang around the court and I ain't nothing.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Let me make a point, if I may.
Yes, sir.
We're in a situation here in this country where we have been betrayed from within. And nobody's saying anything about that. The enemy is here. It's our own government. Betrayed us. Right? Why didn't somebody say it?
$30.
Also, wait a minute,
Correct.
let me finish.
$30.
We talk about the churches. The churches are made up of you and me. We are the church. Right? Forget about the hierarchy. If they want to go the wrong way, let them go. We need to be in charge. And the way we do that is to be connected with the front office. On our knees. We have a flagpole rally that prays every Thursday. Sheriff Mason, what Thursday is it? First Thursday of the month. We should all be there, and we should be praying to Almighty God, because this problem, I'll tell you right now, is beyond our solutions. And if we don't have God in the process, it's over, folks.
That's right. That's right. Amen. Just real quickly, we have for so long allowed our elected representatives a pass when they say there's nothing we can do about it. It's the feds, there's nothing we can do about it. It's the state. And first of all, I thank God that we have Lamar that loves this community and it is devoted to protecting us, because he is our line of defense, and also having a good sheriff is so important. But, we have always thought if we could just explain it to the politicians, then they'll change their mind and they'll get educated and they'll agree with us. It has got to be clear to us by now that the Chamber of Commerce, Delta Airlines, Home Depot, Coca-Cola have the money to have the ear of our politicians. And all we have is the vote. And so the Chamber of Commerce gives them the money, and they come home and they say, I really tried to get that bill through so that illegal aliens wouldn't have driver's licenses. I really tried, but the farmers in South Georgia wouldn't let us. And, we have got to hold them accountable. And the only way that we can hold them accountable is when we challenge them in the primaries. That's it. Because otherwise, if they know that they can come home, they can vote any way they want at the Gold Dome, and they can come home and get forgiveness and get our vote because they're so much better than the Democrat opposition, they're not going to listen to you at all. They might pick up the phone when you call, but to them it's just blah, 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 blah. And so we have to get this in our head that they need to be challenged at the ballot box in May. So